Hello and welcome to the Great War, World War I notes. This is part 2 covering the U.S. entry into the war and actually wrapping up the war. So let's get started. First of all, we have the 5 reasons for the U.S. entering World War I. The first, unrestricted submarine warfare. As you may remember, Germany had this policy of attacking any ship as long as it helped the war effort. This policy might include attacking civilian targets. So the submarines went out, they sank ships around Britain, and then they ran away without taking care of the crew. This broke international law and made the United States very angry. One specific instance was with the sinking of the Lusitania. Despite Germany's dangerous blockade, the British passenger liner, the Lusitania, sailed for England from New York City on May 1st, 1915. The German embassy warned the ship and passengers only to sail at their own risk, which means it was dangerous. The captain of the ship received warnings of submarines in the area, but he pressed on. On May 7th, 1915, a German U-boat launched a torpedo at the Lusitania, sinking the 790-foot ship in less than 18 minutes. To let you know how fast it was, it took several hours for the Titanic to sink. Of the almost 2,000 people on board, over 1,200 died, including 128 Americans and 125 children. The Lusitania's secret cargo of war materials also went down with the ship. The sinking of the Lusitania outraged Americans, and many demanded that Wilson repeal his neutrality. Wilson condemned Germany's actions, but still wanted to keep the U.S. from entering the war. In 1916, Wilson was reelected. His slogan was, "He kept us out of war." In 1916, most Americans respected this, but as time went on, Americans were leaning more towards joining the Allied alliance. Here's an image of a truck having signs encouraging people to vote for Wilson. Another reason for U.S. entry against the Central Powers was the close alliances, the close ties that the U.S. had with Great Britain and France. Now, they didn't have a formal alliance, but they had very strong relationships. Closer relationship with England and France than the Central Powers for many years before war even broke out. These were the countries that the U.S. traded with more frequently and had a history of strong diplomatic relations. Remember, the 13 original colonies were once British, we spoke English, and France had been a long-time ally of the United States. Finally, however, the main thing that really ended up pushing the Americans over the edge was the Zimmermann telegram. This was a telegram sent to the German ambassador in Mexico in January 1917. It came from Berlin, the capital of Germany. It was intercepted and decoded by British intelligence. It stated, first of all, that Germany would soon resume its campaign of unrestricted submarine warfare to try and force an Allied surrender. They had stopped for a while because they had made the Americans upset, and now they were going to start it up again. And it almost did defeat the British. It also proposed, this telegram, that Mexico should ally itself with Germany if the U.S. should enter the war. This made Americans very angry that Germany was trying to get together other countries to fight against us when we weren't even involved. Here's an image of the telegram as it was encrypted. It almost promised Mexico generous financial support to reconquer lost territory from the 1840s Mexican-American War. Furious, President Wilson broke off diplomatic relations with Germany. When U.S. papers published the telegram, Americans called for a declaration of war. To make things even worse, Germany on March 16th sank 3 U.S. trade ships, once again with their unrestricted submarine warfare. So on April 2nd, 1917, Wilson declared war, and Congress passed the declaration of war on April 6th, 1917. After the Zimmerman telegram was published and before the declaration of war and then even after it, the fifth reason was propaganda. In this case, the US launched an intensive propaganda campaign to try and unite public opinion in favor of the war. You'll learn more about propaganda in another section of the notes. Small problem for the US though. It was not equipped to go to war, so it's going to take a series of large actions to prepare for war. First of all, we're going to initiate the draft where men, largely over 18 to about 30, maybe up to 40, have to register to form the armed forces, because at the time the Army only had 200,000 men. U.S. industry and agriculture increased production, including fuel, ships, weapons, and food. A propaganda campaign, as mentioned, is going to be launched. This is going to encourage the widespread rejection of anything German, from hamburgers to German beer, even Beethoven's music. German Americans are going to be widely discriminated against, including being fired from jobs, publicly beaten, and harassed. Here's an image of a registration card to sign up to be in the draft. Additionally, Congress is going to pass the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918 to deter acts of treason. In other words, to make sure that people weren't helping the Central Powers and trying to hurt the United States. Punishment was given not only to spies, but also to those who distributed anti-war literature. Some Americans did oppose entry into the war. They sent out literature with sayings such as, "Might is not right," "Use your light, do not fight," and "Don't be a soldier, be a man." Some pacifists, people opposed to war, claimed that the U.S. was only entering the war to protect its trading income, to protect its businesses. Many soldiers left for the war with excitement. The U.S. is going to send a total of 2 million men to help fight the Allies. Now, many of these U.S. soldiers were at first unprepared to fight, but they're going to arrive just in time, because in 1917, Russia is going to drop out of the war. That country had a communist revolution. In addition, it was experiencing extreme losses on the battlefield and couldn't handle a lot of problems at home and fight the war at the same time. Russia is going to sign a separate treaty with Germany and drop out. In 1918, all the troops that Germany sent against Russia are going to attack France. And they're going to come really close to breaking through the French lines. But in many ways, in the nick of time, U.S. troops are going to arrive and fight several battles that are going to bring about the end of the war, including Chateau Thierry and the Meuse Argonne. Eventually, with U.S. help, the war is going to end. By November 9th, 1918, the Germans are going to revolt and the Kaiser is being overthrown. New German leaders are going to have to sign an armistice ending the Great War on November 11th, 1918.